Savannah Guthrie's mother, Nancy Guthrie, missing day 39. With this many agents on the ground, all the personnel, all the technology, how is it possible? Tonight, we take a close look at exactly what the FBI is looking at. The tattoo on the porch guy's wrist. What can we learn? Believe me, a lot. This as the Pima County Sheriff issues an urgent plea for everyone in the surrounding area to hand in video. Will it make a difference? Well, when you don't know a horse, look at the track record. The answer is yes. Also at this hour, the FBI Behavioral Analyst Unit carefully reviewing not just the porch guy video, but the alleged ransom note. Why? Good evening. I'm Nancy Grace. This is Crime Stories. I want to thank you for being with us. Straight out to Dave Mack, Crime Stories investigative reporter. Dave, a crew armed with ladders has arrived at Nancy Guthrie's home and gone up on the roof. What can you tell me? Why are they there?
This silver pickup truck with multiple ladders in the back pulled onto the Guthrie property, pulled around the driveway, and got up on the house. We don't know what they were looking for, and no announcement has been made, but activity at Nancy Guthrie's home yesterday.
That from our friends at JLR Investigates. Now, we've examined it like a Rubik's Cube over and over, trying to discern what, if anything, we can learn from the tattoo on the porch guy's wrist. And tonight, our findings. Joining us, an all-star panel, but straight out to special guest Darren the Dude Rosa, tattoo artist joining us from Rising Dragon Tattoos in New York City, 30 plus years in the tattoo business. Mr. Rosa, thank you for being with us. Let's start. Control room, please show the video of the perp approaching Mrs. Guthrie's porch. The FBI, according to sources, has enlarged, refined, and brought in a team of analysts to review the tattoo. As you see, he very carefully covered his arms and wrists, not just because he doesn't want to leave fingerprints. It's really hard to get an arm print or an elbow print. That's not the reason. His body is totally covered. Now, let's ISO the tattoo, the sliver of tattoo that we see. We have learned the FBI is doing exactly what we are doing. Darren the Dude Rosa, you've studied this for hours. What is, as you call it, black and gray work?
Black and gray work is a very prevalent style, not only in the southwestern area, but let's say the southwestern area, among gangs, Mexican people who might be in these gangs or cartels like to get black and gray. It's a fine line. The outlines are done with a very fine needle. The details, the shading is done with different dilutions of black ink, and we term that gray. So black and gray is considered a style, and this is most likely that style.
Now, you mentioned gang cartel. I am certainly not convinced that Nancy Guthrie's kidnapping has any of the hallmarks of a cartel move. But what about a gang member wannabe? What about family of gang member? What about family of gang members and hangers-on? Sure. I don't think you can limit to just a gang or cartel member, because once a tattoo is observed by others, they want to replicate it, right? And I want to hone in on the black and gray.
Okay.
But as to relating to a gang or a cartel, let's focus on gang.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you believe the black and gray is from the Southwest or from a certain region of the country, and what region exactly would that be, Mr. Rosa?
Okay. Well, first of all, let's deal with just the practicality of black and gray. Um, if we're talking about a tattoo that was done in a penitentiary, um, they these inmates don't have access to color ink, but most likely they don't even want. This is a style that's uh, been embellishing gangs for years, and they've honed this style, this very subtle gradations of ink to a fine art. And this is even considered hallmarks of people who have moved up in the echelons of a gang. So,
Why do you say that?
well, these people are going to be doing a lot of time. They're not giving up. They're not becoming informants. They're going to be spent 10 years behind bars. They have a lot of time to kill.
In the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. Investigators have reviewed evidence, questioned witnesses, and followed every possible lead. But now, according to crime analyst Nancy Grace, a small detail that many people might overlook could become one of the most important clues in the entire case. And that clue involves a tattoo. Before we get deeper into this update, do two quick things for me. Type CT in the comments so I know you're watching this story with me, and also tell me what country or city you're watching from. It's always amazing seeing where people are following these cases from around the world. And if you're new here, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next part of this investigation. Now here, where things start getting serious. Investigators in Arizona have been working around the clock trying to figure out what happened to Nancy Guthrie. Family members reported her missing after they suddenly lost contact with her, something they say was completely out of character. Friends described her as someone who stayed close to family and rarely disappeared without letting someone know where she was going. That is why, when hours turned into days with no response from Nancy, concern quickly turned into fear. Law enforcement began collecting every piece of information they could. Surveillance footage, witness statements, and digital records all became part of the investigation. But according to reports discussed by Nancy Grace, one witness may have noticed something very specific about a person connected to the timeline of Nancy's disappearance. That witness reportedly mentioned a distinctive tattoo. Now, tattoos might seem like a small detail, but investigators know they can be extremely important. A tattoo is often unique, sometimes personal, and difficult to hide permanently. In many criminal investigations, a single tattoo description has helped identify suspects when other clues failed. According to the information being discussed, the witness described the tattoo as something that stood out enough to remember clearly. Investigators are now examining whether that description matches anyone who may have been near Nancy during the critical hours before she disappeared. And that's exactly why this detail is suddenly getting attention. Because if that tattoo description leads to the right person, it could open the door to answers that investigators have been searching for since the beginning of the case. But here's the part that makes the situation even more intense. Some investigators believe the person connected to that tattoo may have been closer to the situation than people initially realized. Which raises a chilling question. Was the person with that tattoo simply someone passing by, or someone who knows exactly what happened to Nancy Guthrie? In the next part, we're going to look at what investigators say about the witness who noticed the tattoo, and why that moment could become one of the most important turning points in the entire case. Before we get there, don't forget to type CT in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next update. As investigators continued reviewing every detail connected to Nancy Guthrie's disappearance, the witness statement about the tattoo quickly became something they could not ignore. If you're still watching, type CT in the comments so I know you're here, and tell me where you're watching from. These stories reach people across the world, and it's always interesting seeing where everyone is following from. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next updates on this case. Now here is where the investigation starts getting more focused. After the witness described the tattoo, investigators in Arizona began comparing that description with people who may have been in the area around the time Nancy Guthrie disappeared. Detectives know that tattoos can often be used as identifying markers, especially if they have unique symbols, words, or artwork. According to the information being discussed by crime analyst Nancy Grace, the tattoo reportedly stood out enough that the witness remembered it clearly even days later. That immediately made it an important lead. Law enforcement began reviewing surveillance footage from nearby businesses, traffic cameras, and other locations that could help confirm who was present in the area during the critical time frame. Investigators also began checking records and speaking with people who might match the description connected to the tattoo. But as detectives looked deeper into the timeline, another troubling detail began to appear. Some of the movements linked to individuals around the area did not line up perfectly with their original explanations. Investigators often call these timeline gaps, moments where someone's story does not completely match the evidence. Now, that does not automatically mean someone is responsible for a crime, but detectives say those inconsistencies are exactly the kind of details that push an investigation forward. According to discussions around the case, investigators are now trying to determine whether the tattoo described by the witness belongs to someone who was simply nearby, or someone who may have had direct contact with Nancy shortly before she disappeared. And this is why the tattoo clue could be so important. If detectives can match that description to a real person and confirm their location during the critical hours of the disappearance, it could help investigators understand exactly what happened in those final moments before Nancy Guthrie vanished. Right now, authorities say they are still gathering information, and they are asking anyone who might recognize the tattoo description or remember seeing something unusual to come forward. Because sometimes in investigations like this, one small detail remembered by a witness can change everything. And in the next part, we're going to look at the moment investigators believe may have been Nancy Guthrie's last confirmed sighting, and why that moment could connect directly to the tattoo clue. Before we get there, don't forget to drop CT in the comments. Tell me what country or city you're watching from, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the final update on this story. As investigators continue searching for answers in the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, the case has slowly built a timeline filled with questions, witness accounts, and a few clues that detectives believe could eventually lead to the truth. Authorities in Arizona say they have carefully reviewed surveillance footage, phone activity, and statements from people who may have seen Nancy during the final hours before she disappeared. Friends and family described her as someone who stayed closely connected with loved ones, which made her sudden disappearance even more alarming. One of the most talked about developments in the investigation came from a witness who reported noticing a distinctive tattoo on a person seen near the area during the time Nancy was last believed to be present. According to crime analyst Nancy Grace, details like tattoos can become powerful identifiers in investigations because they are often unique and memorable. Detectives began comparing that description with individuals who may have been in the area that day. Investigators also looked closely at possible gaps in timelines from people connected to the case, reviewing whether any movements or explanations did not fully match the evidence collected so far. Law enforcement officials emphasize that at this stage, the tattoo clue remains just one part of a much larger investigation. However, They say even small details can sometimes become the turning point that helps uncover what really happened. Meanwhile, Nancy's family continues to hope for answers. Their focus remains on finding out where she is and what happened during those final hours before she vanished. Investigators say they are still following leads and encourage anyone with information to come forward, because even something that seems minor could help move the case forward. Cases like this often depend on community awareness and people remembering something they may have seen or heard. If you followed this story until the end, type CT in the comments so I know you stayed with me. Also tell me what country or city you're watching from, because viewers from all over the world are discussing cases like this. And if you want more updates and real-life crime stories like this, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next video.
Of the California jurisdiction. You can see her on Peacock. She is the author of the FBI and local law enforcement has kept close to the vest the ransom notes. I'm not sure why, but it seems to me that a lot could be gleaned from the ransom notes. And let me just throw out the example of Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. His manifesto, remember, it was finally published in the New York Times. Once it was published, and he terrorized our country for decades, murder meant nothing to him. His brother recognized certain vernacular phrases, phraseology in the manifesto and said, that's got to be my brother, for Pete's sake. Then there's BTK, Bind, Torture, Kill, Dennis Rader. He taunted oh my goodness, there he is dressed up in the victim's clothing, freak. He taunted law enforcement and media with these typewritten notes. Idiot. Of course, the typewriter can be tracked back to a certain typewriter, even not just with the keys with an older model, but with a ball type, such as found on the IBM Selectra. You can get it from the ribbon in a Selectra. So the use of a typewriter, in our case, the use of email, the content of those ransom letters could tell me a lot. This video from our friends at IBM. And of course, there's John Benet Ramsey, for Pete's sake. Who says hints? Who do you know, except me occasionally, that uses the word hints? Hints. That's what the ransom letter said. So why are they keeping it close to the vest? And what can we learn from the ransom letter, Dr. Bethany?
You know, Nancy, those ransom notes are a treasure trove of information. For instance, the BTK killer was a very rigid, regimented guy. Remember, he was a local dog catcher. He would measure everybody's grass on their lawns to make sure it didn't grow too much. And the way he wrote the typewritten ransom note reflects those characteristics because it's very rigid, very small type. But moving on to Nancy Guthrie, it can tell us what the intent or the motivation of the kidnap is. For instance, if the motivation is simply money, then the ransom note is going to be fairly short with very detailed information about how to send the money. However, if it's more like a kidnap because somebody is stalking Nancy, because they're obsessed with her, they're obsessed with Savannah or maybe one of the other siblings, then there's going to be more of a manifesto type quality. These people, stalkers love to write about it. They love to talk about it. So in this case, we would see somebody putting a lot of information into that ransom note. Nancy, there are also what I call affectations. These are verbal flourishes that people use to make what they're talking about appear way more important than it really is. And I tend to think of criminals as being rather narcissistic, shallow, empty people who have to prop themselves up. So they would be more likely to use an affectation, like maybe the misuse of a big word that makes them feel like they're very smart, and they misuse that word all the time. So, and the public is going to be fascinated. One other quick thing, Nancy, it's important to know what the writer of the note saw in Nancy Guthrie's room that could be verified, because is it something that any kidnapper would see, like a kidnap for ransom, or is it something that a stalker would see, like maybe a family photograph, or maybe, I hate to say it, a pair of underwear, a pair of stockings, something highly personal that the kidnapper would want to have control over in order to gain proximity to the victim.
Bethany, point well taken. The video we were just showing is from our friends to the Today Show. To Brian Fitzgibbons, what do you make of law enforcement holding on to the ransom notes? And remember, there were threats to Nancy Guthrie in there. Now, one theory is that the description of the inside of her home was given because they could no longer offer proof of life. They could not send a photo or a video of Nancy Guthrie to show proof of life. That's one train of thought. But there were threats against Nancy and details regarding the inside of her home. So why not release the ransom notes? Fitzgibbons, you've got a theory.
Yeah, so first of all, the FBI doesn't do things because they have nothing to lose. They do things when they have something to gain. And in this case, I believe we do know quite a bit about the ransom notes that were sent to the media outlets, that they were delivered via email. They were not that long. The writing wasn't that long. And similar to Ted Kaczynski, his manifesto released by the FBI in 1995 had over 35,000 words. So the FBI was very confident in that case that someone might be able to identify his ideology, his writing style, things that he was saying in that long, detailed manifesto. In John Benet Ramsey's case, this was a handwritten letter, okay, that someone may be able to identify the handwriting, the way that words join together. So I think in this case, it's that the FBI has determined that they don't have anything to gain. There may be a chance that copycat demands are sent out if that's released, and that it distracts from the momentum of the case.
Joining us now, Jeffrey Gentry, forensic certified analyst with quite the expertise with law enforcement and tattoos, obviously. But Jeff, what do you make of them refusing to release his ransom note? Or any of them, providing they are in fact connected?
A lot of times when there is a police investigation and there is something specific that the police do not want to release, it's usually because it's unique, and it can be a unique identifier of this suspect. So say, for example, the suspect mentioned something that nobody else would know or nobody else would say. You don't want to just release that information to the public, because then everybody's going to know it. So when they start questioning this suspect, when they catch them, they want to be able to ask them about this specific information that maybe no one else would say or nobody else would be able to identify. That way they can know that they have the right person. So there's usually a reason that you don't release this information to the public. And that's usually why. You want to have something in your pocket to be able to ask these people that is going to trigger a reaction and be able to be used as a unique identifier when they apprehend this suspect. So that's my theory on why they're not releasing this information to the public, because they have something specific that they're going to be able to use to identify this suspect when they catch them.
If you know or think you know anything about the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, please dial toll-free 800-225-5324. Or if you wish to remain anonymous, 520-882-7463. There is a $1.2+ million reward for information leading to the whereabouts of Nancy Guthrie. An arrest, much less a conviction, is not required. $1.2+ million. Thank you to our guests joining us tonight, but especially to you for helping us keep the search for Nancy Guthrie alive. Nancy Gray signing off for tonight, but I'll see you tomorrow night. And until then, good night, friend.